Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, since I've been getting a little more back involved in occultism, of course Aleister Crowley comes up, and you read these different books, The Son of Sam, The Ultimate Evil by Maury Terry. And they make these, this is one of the problems with researchers, and you read their information, make these very sweeping comments on who are Satanists, because these Satanists have magical books out there. And one of the magical texts and one of the most oddly held in high esteem people is Aleister Crowley. Now, I've done long talks on him, and I'll just go over a few areas here again. These things get buried in, 1,500 videos I have posted up there. So people don't see them, and it doesn't look like people go back in. And of course, most of our videos, you can't locate them in the search engines. It's difficult to find any, unless you subscribe to this channel, which you should be, and hitting the like button. You're not going to find any of our stuff to any great degree in any kind of search engine. So you find them sometimes you don't. And if you don't punch in the channel name and then look around, you're most likely not going to find our videos. And of course, then we have so much to go through. It is a daunting task to a degree. But, all the information you need about everything in life is on this channel. And it's the right stuff. So let's talk about Aleister Crowley. And of course, he said that's how his name was pronounced, like holy. Well, this is an interesting character. I'm not going to spend too much on his background, but he came from a radical Christian family. You're talking about evangelists who, oddly enough, made their money from brewing beer and running little beer establishments or maybe little restaurants. It's unclear, but apparently they came up with some sort of way of getting beer to people cheaply. And you got to remember, you can't make anything in these times. So they made a lot of money, and a lot of money was left to him to a degree. We don't know what it all adds up to, but it probably was a lot of money. You got to remember, this is in the turn of the century, 1920, 1930. I think he died in the 40s. So you're talking about, if he had $100,000, that's close to being $1 million. So we don't know. He certainly was a big flake. He didn't pay for anything. Very typical of rich people that use everybody else and keep the money to themselves, etc. The problem is he never really had any income. I think he stated one time that he doesn't want to charge people for training them. Well, that's how you make money. None of his books were very successful at the time. He wrote pornography and other things that basically were illegal and you couldn't sell them well. And he was pretty much a business failure. And he got into many different legal situations, and he lost every single legal case he was involved in, except one, from what I understand. So he showed no power as well. So he wasn't able to dominate people in that area. And this is one of the big problems with occultists in general, is they don't often show power, and a lot of times it's difficult. You're dealing with very odd situations. It's hard to push your will through in those kind of situations. After all, he is Aleister Crowley, but the point is that he should have been able to go against others, and came under very strong psychic attack that he was hurt with and everything else. Well, it doesn't show me a person of power. And of course, these are all the kind of stories. A lot of what he's into is a lot of the things that Satanists are into. I mean, ultimately, you could call Crowley a Satanist, meaning he was dealing with evil magic. And that's basically the bigger picture of what a Satanist is someone who's doing evil magic, compared to black magic, which my definition is you can use demons in a positive way, meaning they're helping your life. Demons are connected to money, sex, revenge. Well, I mean, these are things you all need in life. So using them without worshiping them is black magic. Evil magic is when you start to worship them. So, I mean, he was kicked out of Italy by Mussolini because he was doing all sorts of, or at least rumored doing all these perverse things in a particular place he had there. All of these things are noted facts of what he was involved with. Now, one of the things that he's most famous for is the taking over, not the creation of the OTO, which is a Crowleyite organization. Now, this was originally a German organization that was turned over to him. The people involved didn't want to run it anymore. I think they were getting old or whatever. So they brought this guy in to think that he could bring money and success and popular people. And of course, you got to remember, that's not what rich people do. They take and take. So that's exactly what he did. Now, he went through the typical school system of affluent British, which is the boarding school situation where single sexes are all together from different ages. And of course, this creates a horrible problem. This is the same thing that the Tibetan religious schools do. So you have to wonder what's going on there. You go to a Tibetan school at 10, and of course, who else is there? Well, there's 12, 13, 14, 15, who knows? I don't know, sort of maybe all the way up to 18-year-olds or maybe even older. So they're mixing you in with people who are now at a very high sexual level, and they're not afraid to express it. As a 10-year-old really is probably sexually confused in terms of, and certainly isn't too anxious to follow through because of fear. And this means even if it's your normal sexuality. So, Crowley states that this buggering, particularly from older boys, was commonplace in most of the schools, that's what everybody did. And it makes sense. One of the problems is that homosexuality was illegal in the United Kingdom until 1969. So there was a few people that came out. I think Oscar Wilde came out, and he got into a lot of trouble, I believe. It's illegal. You get thrown in prison for being a homosexual. This happened to the famous code breaker who broke the Nazi code from the machines they were using, and he was caught propositioning a gay prostitute. And they told him, well, you got 20 years in prison after saving Britain, or you have to be chemically neutered. You had to take some sort of chemicals that causes things. And after taking these chemicals, he then died. I don't know how soon after. But let's understand that you just can't come out. Now, Crowley will not say that he was a homosexual because of that, but he was, and he was conditioned as a child. This is how you can warp someone's sexuality, and generally, particularly, this is used in the intelligence communities to control males in general, is that they break your whole reality of life by homosexual sexuality, which is completely unnormal to the average person unless you're gay. I guess if you're gay and they try and break your mind, well, it's kind of a bonus. But the whole idea is that is common. They did this in the Montauk Project and other things of how they condition children in general. But that's not what Crowley did, but Crowley was conditioned through these, I think they call them actually public schools. Public schools are private and private schools are public. I don't quite understand that. However, the ridiculousness of the British English is. So, understanding that, so he had this, and if that's what you grow up with and that's what you are having on a consistent basis, this is going to become your sexuality. So you can change your sexuality, particularly if you are conditioned at a young age. Now, I've seen this happen even to older people who were in prison for many years. They came out of prison and they sought homosexual relationships, even though when they went into prison or before that were even married. So if that's all you have and you have so much testosterone in you and that's your only access or your only release, this is going to become normal. And then it's going to become enjoyable and maybe even preferential. So there's less hassles in homosexual relationships by thousands of %. You can go into a gay bar of either sex and have sex within minutes. I've seen it I know about it. I lived in an area which was homosexually based, Palm Springs, California, and there were clubs that did that. You just go in there and that's it. It's just instantaneous. So there's a lot of benefits to that. While heterosexuals, it's a hassle. I mean, how many people are able to go into a bar and pick someone up easily? Well, it's rare, no matter what some BS people tell you. Bottom line, is not rare. So there is a certain convenience factor to it. And that convenience factor turns into a preference. Now, he took over the OTO, of course, which was a German organization. Well, well, if you know anything about Germans, you know that they're one of the gayest races out there. I mean, the U.S. military calls homosexuality the German disease. So it wasn't too difficult to convert the German OTO based on this fantasy stuff. They got this whole foundation of goofball stupidness that is called the OTO. And I've seen books written by OTO people, and they don't mention what Crowley went in there and changed mostly. Now, they brought him in, and he changed the OTO basically, regardless of all the fluff at the bottom. You go up the ladder, and it is a sex magic cult, plain and simple. It's all about sex magic because that's what Aleister Crowley was all about. But, you don't necessarily want to slap people in the face with that. You kind of want to manipulate them and bring them in. It's so common. So the first sexual degree of the OTO, and I don't know what it's got. I'm not going to get into all that. And don't leave stupid comments because I'm just going to delete them, you bozos. Well, it's degree 54 of the tiger head. Who cares? There's 3 sexual degrees there, whatever they're named. And the first sexual degree, and of course, this is how you kind of move people through the system. And I don't know how they quite do this. But again, I guess people, any port in a storm, I don't know how people that just get involved. But I guess you can get manipulated into much of almost anything. But the first, of course, is masturbation. So they teach you how to use your energies masturbatively, which is, of course, bad practice right off the start, because that's a very draining energy. It is magically disempowering. Then, because you're dealing with single energies there, and if you drain yourself enough, well, you're magically extremely weak as you physically are. The other thing is, of course, from there, you're supposed to go into heterosexual practices. Now, I guess there's people in the temple, or there are 1 or 2 women, or maybe somebody who looks like a woman. I'm not really sure how that works. The head of the OTO, their main office, is a San Francisco. That ought to tell you the kind of crowd that's there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got their own sexuality, but I don't like anybody being manipulated. If you're gay and they try and manipulate you into doing heterosexual things, I think that's wrong. You are what you are, and vice versa. So first of all, it starts off bad there. But, he's in this very bizarre, dark reality that the OTO was to begin with, so I allege. And the whole idea is that the next level is that. So I don't know where the women are coming from. Maybe they're bisexual women. You got to remember that, quote, gay people, most of them go through phases of bisexuality and can function with the opposite sex, even though they prefer one over the other. Now, I'm not sure anybody is truly bisexual, but I guess there are. Can you get turned on by both? Because sex is a very mental thing. If you're not turned on, you don't function. So women can get away with that because basically, to put it bluntly, all they have to do is lubricate themselves. If you are a male, you have to sexually perform, and that means you have to have erections. So this is something that you have to do. So it's difficult. I always wonder that with bi people. So you can turn it on and off. I guess you can develop that, and you can not focus on one thing or another. You just focus on the act, whether you're taking or receiving. And you could go from there. So I don't really understand that, and it's something that, it's up to you. I don't really care what anybody does as long as it's with consenting adults, and that's what it means. If someone's consenting to it of their free will and they are able to consent, meaning they're not retarded or they're not stoned or all the things that people can't consent, it's up to you. So then after that, now, as I said, I don't know where the mixture comes. That group from I've known, you don't find too many women that say they're in the OTO, but There may be some very tired women in the OTO. I don't know. But the whole idea is from there, and as I said, how do you make this transition? You go into homosexual, which is the highest level of operation per Aleister Crowley. Now, here again, it may be easier for women to do that if there are any women in that organization, because women tend to be bisexual by nature, and always have been, while it's not necessarily the case with males. Generally not. It's always the forbidden. It's looked down upon. Of course, that's very now. It's interesting that some of the most powerful warriors, such as the Spartans, always had homosexual lovers that they took onto battlefields, etc., usually young boys, and the samurais did the same thing. So it's interesting, and the samurais were very much against any female contact. So who were they having contact with? Was it just the boys they brought along to take care of their equipment, or was it each other? Because they didn't want to touch the weakness of a woman. So this is something that people don't quite understand. I think the Spartans were more into the fact that you don't take women necessarily in battlefields or in other locations, and it was frowned upon that would be your only sexual. So everybody of a Spartan was expected to have a wife, but they also needed to breed people. So I don't know what the whole thing is there. They don't call anal sexual intercourse Greek for no reason. So this is all where it comes from. So we do need to understand that that's Aleister Crowley. That's what he put together. He's written a lot of other stuff. He's written some practical magic books, some Golden Dawn stuff that he basically took from them. He didn't really know any magic like that, nor did his research. The Golden Dawn, he was in the first level. They refused to let him go up any higher because he was a jerk. And he took all that information, wrote his own books, passed it on to Israel Regardie, who was one of his lovers, and he put together these other books that we have today. But we have to understand that that's what his sexuality was, and he couldn't admit that he was a homosexual because it was illegal. And it's not a joke. I'm not sure how Oscar Wilde got away with it or what the story was there, but the point is, if you come out anywhere prior to 1970, you're in trouble. In a society who's notoriously known for its buggering in all of its school systems, and in general, the British, particularly the English, who are mostly German, have always been known for their homosexuality. So, I mean, it's not surprising. So, it's very, very interesting, but that's the case there, and there are millions of closeted males that have wives and children, yet on the weekends go out to gay events and have gay lovers. This is not unusual throughout history and through so many other people. So someone saying that, oh, well, he had a kid or he had girlfriends. Well, it doesn't matter. That's part of the game that was being done here. So it certainly isn't something that seems to be difficult to do for gay people. And the gay people I've known have generally been transitory. They did have sex with women and then moved on to gay sex as their lifestyle. So it's not unusual, or you find that lifestyle later in life. That's not unusual either. Someone, whether it's male or female, after even 20, 30 years of marriage, will then move on to somebody else. I mean, it's not very unusual. So we do need to understand who Aleister Crowley was, what he was all about. He is basically, to use a term, he was magically impotent. I mean, I can't really find where he achieved much of anything. He talks about him getting almost killed in magical attacks with McGregor. He's losing court case after court case. He was never able to generate much money, which means he wasn't able to empower sales of what he was doing in terms of selling his books or some other products. And this was all part of his basically failure as a magician, and his general philosophy, again, is kind of boring and nothing, of what his magical philosophies and training. Nothing that I've ever found very interesting, but it's interesting how people, grab onto that. And they grab onto it because of the nebulousness of sexuality, of the egotistical do what you want in life. And so, it gives you a bunch of excuses to kind of be a low-level sexual deviant. And No, really, isn't that what everybody wants to be? I mean, that's what all the rich people do. That's what the drug addicts, the ayahuasca freaks, all these people that are out there. I mean, basically, they're not reaching for higher levels. And we have all sorts of misconduct through all religions, regardless of what they are. So the point is, you never get out of your base reality. And so a lot of people just grab onto that. Well, if that's what it's all about, that's what they do. And here's a guy that's going to give me an excuse to do it. So it's like all the scumbuckets that are in most traditional religions, particularly Christians, who are just two-faced, rotten liars that hate everybody. And they're certainly not preaching love and peace or trying to help people. They work with evil, rotten people and perpetrate the society into what it is. But I think it's important to understand Aleister Crowley and his sex magic. That was it. The point is you worked up to the highest level of the OTO. Anybody who's interested in the OTA or going in there, well, be very careful and don't read the first book. Ask about these sexual initiations, and I wouldn't be too happy to just jump in until you understand what the process is. Now, if you're interested in that and that fascinates you, throwing sex into something can always make it more interesting and fun if you are doing it safely, effectively, and it's not warping your brain. Now, if you're a bisexual person, I mean, this is a perfect path for you. It's like anybody who is gay who wants to take a vacation. Well, make sure you go to Germany. That's where you're totally accepted and will find masses amount of people who will support your lifestyle. So these are the kind of things that you have to look at in life. But don't let organizations trap you. So if you go into these organizations, and I know many years ago I talked to a guy about this on, of all places, Facebook, and after talking to him about that, in the next week or two, this male guy started to post pictures of pretty women. Well, I don't think it really was in the OTA anyway, but hey, baby, you're in for a big surprise. So spread it and get with the program. Or leave. Until next time.